Hello, my name is Pamela McAlexander, and I'd like to welcome you to the Empower Yourself Summit, and I will be your host. This summit was created just for you. When you struggle with fear and self-doubt, it's almost like you're feeling stuck in your life. You no longer want one that lacks passion and desire, one that is like being held hostage and just wanting to escape and live the life of your dreams. Today, I have an amazing guest who is a world-renowned author, a retired psychotherapist, soul healer, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual teacher. He is the author of the best-selling Earth Magic, Animal Spirit Guide, Sacred Ceremony, and many other publications. As a lifelong healer and teacher, he has extensively studied and explored spiritual transformation, trauma recovery, shamanism, hypnotherapy, breathwork, and energy psychology. He brings a wealth of skills and experience to his writing, teaching, and healing work. He conducts workshops on a variety of topics related to earth magic, soul healing, shamanism, and earth-centered spirituality. He currently offers an Earth Magic Practitioner Certification Training course. I would like to welcome Dr. Stephen Farmer. We're happy to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Pamela. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Well, as you know, our summit evolves around empowering yourself, conquering your fears, eliminating self-doubt, taking control of your life, and achieving your dreams. So looking at your own life, can you share with us a story around this struggle, what you did to overcome it, and how you came out on the other end, which is obviously doing something you love to do?
Well, the one that comes to mind, there's certainly been probably a handful of those epic moments when you're faced with a challenge and you have some choices to make about what to do with the challenge. A little bit of background that leads into the story, Pamela. I can't say that I am now, nor have I been for many years now, but as a child I was very, very shy. I was very introverted. I hadn't quite figured out how to operate with people, other human beings, etc. You know, just a really shy kid. And yet I could see in retrospect something was compelling me to move out beyond that shyness. It's almost like I was in a bit of a container for a period of time. And I was also an athlete. I played football in high school and college, really enjoyed it. And then wandered around a bit afterwards trying to figure out what to do. But I got this urging, I should say, to teach. I got my master's. I spent a year or two wandering, and then I went back to school, got my master's. And in California, the community college system is such that if you have a master's, you can teach. You don't need a doctorate. You don't need, or sometimes there'll be a special skill that you have. Mm-hmm. So I applied to all of the community colleges in Orange County, at which time there were 7 of them. And I got a call back from Coastline Community College. And I thought, great, I just got my master's a couple months ago. Still, I'd say I'd still at that point was quite shy. Mm-hmm. I went, but I felt, again, that compulsion. And I think the listeners can identify with that. You just feel this internal urging that says, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And so I followed my urging, and I got a call from Coastline, said, come on down, we'd like to have you teach. And I said, great. I got in my suit and tie, and, I think I did a pretty good job of doing the interview. And the response was great. The gal that interviewed me, it was a new college that was a college without walls, an experiment that was connected to one of the campuses here in Orange County. And so I answered the questions, we did the interview, and I felt pretty good about the interview. And I thought, great, I might get the job. I can teach Psych 1A, or Psych 1B, the introductory courses. This is going to be great. She comes back to me and says, yeah, we want to hire you. And I went, and I'm really excited. I go, great. And she says, we'd like you to teach assertiveness training. Now, the cosmic joke about that, I said, yes, I'm on the outside, I'm like faking it. I had to, I faked it because I felt, again, the urging to teach. But inside, I'm going, assertiveness training, you've got to be kidding. Me, teach how do you do that? I can barely stand here and talk to the interviewer and feel okay about it, much let alone teaching other people how to do this. but again, in line with what you were saying, the empowerment part was, again, I honored that urging, and I felt such a strong draw to teach. You know, it was definitely, in retrospect, my soul's destiny to teach
Mhm.
and to do healing work, that I didn't even question. I went home and I went, oh God, what am I going to do? And I sat and thought about it. And I thought, well, you've got two choices here. You could call him back, cancel, or you can do what you have to do, which is to learn as much as you can over the summer. I had the summer to prepare about assertiveness training and go in, and the old saying, fake it till you make it.
Right.
And it was, again, the cosmic joke, or the urging, I think, there's no accidents that I was teaching that, because, again, another aphorism, we teach what we need to learn, and definitely I needed to learn how to be assertive, how to communicate better, etc. I wasn't terrible at it, don't get me wrong, but if I was going to be teaching, which I've spent my whole life teaching since then, something in one form or another, it definitely was in my soul's destiny to do so, to go there and to face this. And so I like I said, I went home, and that summer I took I think it was a 2-day course. I looked up all over, a 2-day course in assertiveness training. I went to that. I got some information there. I read 3 or 4 books, and then came September when it was time to teach, and it was an 18-week class. The first time out, first time they'd ever done the class, first time that I'd ever done the class. And again, what it led to was I was probably 2 or 3 steps ahead of the students as far as that goes. But I did an okay job, and overcame a lot of my own shyness and my own fears of being in front of a group. Public speaking, as you probably know and you've heard, there was a survey done years ago, what are you most afraid of? And the second most common fear was death, and
Right.
the first was public speaking. Most people would rather die than get up in front of a group, so I could put my hand up on that one at that time. Anyway, so that's one story that comes to mind that really set me on a course that was very congruent and has been with my soul's journey. And again, I know that it's guided. I know that there's some other force that is operating, however you want to explain that, that puts us in those kind of situations. And okay, you want to do it? Okay, here goes. You know, this is what your soul wants. What do you want?
Right.
And we got to clear the ego out of the way to allow that full expression to come through. And it literally was one of those turning points in my life. We go right or we go left. Okay, I'm going to go left and follow what I know is the right path.
Wonderful. Well, you mentioned a lot about earth magic. Tell me about it.
Earth magic is, well, my background just a little bit is, you alluded to it in the introduction, and thank you, that was a very kind introduction. I always hear that and I go, really? Yeah, okay, that's true.
I'm wonderful.
It's not an ego trip, it's just that I've done a lot of things. You know, I realize that, and I've earned it too. I've got the gray hair to show it. Anyway, earth magic is, the concept of earth magic is related to shamanism. I was a psychotherapist for a number of years. 20 some years ago, I was introduced to shamanism, and it felt very much at home. You know, it's connected to me ancestrally. I know it. I now do teach about various topics about shamanism and earth magic, as you mentioned. I do healing sessions, private consultations, remote healing, remote sessions, etc. And that's really so I'm teacher healer. That's pretty much it. And I would add communicator, especially after that experience as teaching assertiveness training. I went on to teach conversational speaking, and it's just amazing how that works. Anyway, back to the question. Earth magic is really the reawakening, if you will, of Brutal Bettelheim wrote a book years ago called The Re-Enchantment of the World. I really love that title. And if you think of the breakdown of the words, because I like words, enchantment is from the root word chanson, which is French for song. You know, the world sings to us, the world speaks to us, communicates to us. There's real magic in the world, and I think we get so, what would be the word? We get so kind of blasé about what I think are little miracles that occur. And again, some would find this silly, but I am like heartfelt, happy, excited about this. Right outside my door here is a garden that I started growing about a month ago.
Hmm.
And I go out and check it every day. To me, it's like a little miracle. Again, it's easy to overlook or just get blasé, kind of go, oh, that's cool. You know, the broccoli's growing fine, tomatoes are showing. No, but for me, I actually, just yesterday, I just sat there and talked to the plants
Hmm.
and was enthralled. I was in another zone of some sort, just enthralled with the magic of plants growing that will turn into food for us and
Sure.
little things like that. The little miracles of the rain that comes, you know, the way the weather changes, the cloud patterns. I get excited about the stars,
Hmm.
seeing Venus in the sky, what I believe was Venus last night for the first time, because we tend to get layers of clouds, fog over at this time of the year in Southern California. The moon, woo, just to walk in the light of the full moon and be bathed in the light. That, as you can tell, I get
Sure.
excited just talking
Absolutely.
about it. That is earth magic. And it's not only that, it goes a couple of steps further, which is our ancestors long ago had such an intimate relationship with the earth. You know, they lived with the land, they lived with the natural world. They, of course, had shelters. That's natural to want shelters. Every mammal, every being wants a
Sure.
shelter at certain times, including us humans. But they really lived with the world so they could resonate with the vibrations of the various beings. They could communicate with the various beings. They could communicate with the spirit of that tree or that plant or of that animal. Now that's the second layer, if you will, of earth magic is, wow, we can actually learn from each other. We can actually remember what our ancestors just naturally knew, which is that it's not just a philosophy or a saying from a Native American that we are all connected in the web of life. Well, we truly are. And to move it from here to here is what's important, that we can really feel. Just like I say, and I get emotional about this, even as I say this to you, Pamela, little things like watching plants grow, you know, or checking on them. Little things like seeing yesterday the bunny rabbit.
Right.
And I was at the gym working out, and there's this little rabbit, and I went, well, that's so cool. Look at that little being. Um, I could go on and on about this, but you get the point. Is the world's magical? We've forgotten that. You know, in our Western civilization, particularly, we've forgotten the magic of the world. We get in our electronics and and I'm just as guilty as the next person. You know, where
Sure.
you go into a restaurant, and what is everybody doing? You know, on their iPhones. Um, but what was it? There's a book called The Last Child in the Woods, and it's cure. I think the subtitle is something like "Curing Your Children from Nature Deficit Disorder." I love that. I love that saying, nature deficit
Absolutely.
disorder. The quote at the front of the book is from a 10-year-old boy says, I like my house because there's a lot of electrical outlets. You know, it's the way, it's what we do these days. I understand that too. And yet there's something severely out of balance when we
Hmm.
get so caught up in the being inside our little cubby hole with our electronic gear, etc. They're wonderful. What we're doing right now
Right.
is such a gift to be able to do this, you know, as a webinar. But how about getting outside? You know, how
Right.
about going and sitting next to a tree and feeling the tree breathe, you know, breathing with the tree, asking tree to teach you, you know, things like that. Um, anyway, again, I could go on and on, but that's the magic, the recapturing of, the remembering of, and I mean at a deep, deep, heartfelt level, a soul level of that connection. And we're getting better at it.
Right.
We are. I think we're getting better at it. I feel a great deal of hope, especially when I see the children these days. Our daughters are technically my stepdaughters go to a Waldorf-inspired school. They do composting. They grow gardens. They have rituals, the seasonal rituals. It's just wonderful to have that sort of shift that's occurring, along with many other things in education too.
Yeah, I have found that, we just sort of have a tendency sometimes to just get so busy in our life and being on that hamster wheel of life that we just take
And
for granted all the things around us.
Yes, that's so true. It is, we become numb, to the experiences, and it's unfortunate. But again, I don't want to be just on the downer with this. The signs that I see that things are changing is the adaptability we as humans have, and also the upsurgence of an interest in not so much in well, more and more people are being drawn to things like shamanism and
Hmm.
shamanic practice, like working with energy. I just saw a client today who's just was introduced to energy work a few months ago, and she's so intrigued. She said, I go back and forth, though. I forget what we all do. You kind of wander off the path for a while, and then something maybe nudges us back, and then we wander off the path, and then something nudges us back. Hopefully, we can stay on the path a little bit longer each time, so that our actions are congruent with our soul's purpose. And I speak about that a lot because sometimes it's hard to get in touch with what is my soul's purpose? How do I figure out what my soul's purpose is? Well, sometimes God helps you out, like
Right.
kicking me in the behind. Look, farmer, you're going to teach a certain training, one way or the other, we're going to get you there. If you don't do it this time, you're going to get another opportunity. I'm convinced I would have been shoved in that direction, or pulled more accurately in that direction, had I turned that down anyway.
I think a lot of people end up in that situation too, where, unfortunately, something drastic has to happen in their life. And then all of a sudden, you get that appreciation for life's too short. What am I missing out on? And you just go for something you would not otherwise go for.
Yep, yep. I occasionally I saw this video on YouTube, or it's from some mailing I get. It was pretty interesting. It was the theory is that the Andromeda Galaxy, about 5 billion years from now, is going to collide with the Milky Way. And then it's going to do this a little bit, a couple of times like this, and then eventually form a larger star, excuse me, a larger galaxy,
Hmm.
a new one, like a bubble galaxy. And I thought, well, there's two ways you can go with that. You can worry about that.
Right.
5 billion years from
Five
now, oh
billion
my
years.
God, there won't be any Earth, there won't be any sun. This is going to explode. And believe me, it's kind of interesting to go down that path, like, and get very just in despair. Oh, what the heck is what this worth? But where I do is I kind of use that image. I bring that image to mind to say, and I am here right now.
Hmm.
This is where it's at. As many mystics and spiritual teachers have talked about for literally thousands of years. This is it. So make the most of it.
Right.
Don't get caught up in the mundane. You don't get. It doesn't mean we don't deal with taking the trash out and all that, but don't get caught up in it. There's a different perspective. First there's a mountain, then there's no mountain. We wander back. Oh, what is this all about? And then there's a mountain. Oh, there's a mountain, but we see it with a different set of eyes. The Zen Buddhists would say, but it's broader than just Zen Buddhism. Is that we can see another human being even in a virtual way, and be able to connect with them across time and space.
Right.
Wow. We can do it without this stuff too. Remote healing.
Right.
It works.
Hmm.
I just completed a manuscript for my next book, if I may just
Absolutely.
jump into that, Pamela. Just briefly, I'm very excited about it. It's called Healing Ancestral Karma.
Ooh.
And subtitle is Freeing Yourself from Unhealthy Family Patterns. Not that all karma is unhealthy. There's some very positive karma too. Certain gifts, my sense of humor, my mother, God bless her, but even beyond her, that if we go back generations, I'm sure we'll find in her lineage, moms, dads, grandpa, great grandpa, whatever, that also had a great sense of humor. You are the product of the love of thousands. If you go back 10 generations, you have 1,054 ancestors.
Wow.
If you go back 20 generations, you have over a million.
Wow.
Anyway, ancestral karma, there's process. First off, is understanding about ancestors. We're one of the, I don't know about the only, but certainly one of the few cultures where we don't really take into account that grandma and grandpa who are deceased are not only deceased loved ones,
Right.
through, but they are ancestors, and they are connected, to a much deeper lineage of ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of my motivation or my intention with the book, is just to bring that in more and hopefully encourage us all to think more about ancestors and ancestral spirits. It's just so much a part of many other cultures. And again, it's part of our loss, I believe, is not working with the ancestors in some way. It's not about worshiping them. It's not that. But it's honoring them. That we can have ancestral altars, that they come to us. We have proof again and again, near-death experiences, that life goes on afterwards. Mediums, experiences I'm sure you've had, many of the listeners have, of that contact from a deceased loved one, mother, father, grandfather. I've had a few instances of that kind of contact. I was recently in one of my own spiritual discipline is the Shamanic journey, where I send my consciousness into non-ordinary reality, and then I work with helping spirits, and then if I'm doing a treatment, I bring that information back on behalf of someone, but also just for divination or guidance. And I was taken to this really interesting area called the Land of the Ancestors, and my father showed up.
Wow.
And again, I get a little wave of emotion because I feel very much at peace with my mother and my father, and especially he shows up a lot more than my mother. And he told me a lot, but basically he gave me a blessing and saying he's watching out for our clan.
Right.
And my eldest daughter, verified that, says I can feel him around quite a bit. She's really intuitive, more so than she allows. But he also told me that I've got 3 grandchildren, a 9-year-old grandson, and he recently, his grandmother and her husband separated. He was very close to her husband, and he told me, look at Stephen, you need to pay more attention to Jaden. He really needs you right now. And so I have, I have a relationship with him, don't get me wrong, but, more regular, 2 weeks, he's going to come down, etc. And he left a message one time, not too far, long ago, saying, I really miss you. Opa, he calls me Opa.
Right.
My vanity. Ready for Grandpa. That was Grandpa, his grandfather, and his Opa. So my point being is the ancestors can help us. They want to. We just need to open our consciousness to that. And also there's ways that, as Hollister Rand, the friend and a very gifted medium, said, when we do the healing work for ourselves, we heal backward and we heal forward. Mm-hmm. We heal ourselves, and I'm sure you could attest to that.
Yeah.
Many of your listeners can. When you do the healing work, your descendants benefit. But the catch here is not only do they benefit, but the ancestors that go into the afterlife, they're not done yet. They're carrying some baggage. They're not as much maybe, but they're still carrying some baggage. So they have to go through their own spiritual evolution as they continue to evolve in the spiritual afterlife. And that's not just my idea. That's
absolutely
many other teachers that profess that particular idea about ancestors. So anyway, it's a good book. I'm really happy with it, and I can't wait till it's out. Going to be out in October. So
yeah. Wonderful! I can't wait to read it. That's you've written some amazing books, and I share in a lot of your views. And even so much as every house that we've owned, when I've set up my office, it always had to have the full window view, and I get little groundhog that comes up every morning to my window, and
Oh, beautiful, Pamela. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for that comment. It's the point. It's the point of the books, is to really encourage and inspire people to do things like that.
Well, can I ask you one more question with regards to like shamanism? Can you explain shamanism? Because I know a lot of people have differing opinions, and I think it's just from the place of not really knowing.
Oh, sure. I could talk quite at length about shamanism. First off, it's just a word. It happens to come from the Tungus language in Siberia, and it basically means seer.
Okay.
It's taken on different meanings, of course, these days in the contemporary world. Um, I am called shaman by quite a few people, and I'm seen that way quite a bit. However, my own take on this, and this is certainly my own opinion and feeling about it, is it's not up to me to call myself a shaman. I speak of myself as soul healer or shamanic practitioner, and I'm fine with other people calling me that. Michael Harner, who is the author of Way of the Shaman, he's an anthropologist that was down in the late 50s, early 60s in the Amazon basin, observing the cultures, and he decided against the rules. That's why I like this guy. Against the rules, he decided to participate in the ceremony, and that's a big no-no. You know, at that time it was, because there was still the common belief that you could completely observe objectively. Again, separation, you know, from everything else. And we know that through the study of physics and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on it. Not particle physics, but it's a common word. Anyway, through the study of physics, that we can't really separate ourselves. The observer affects that which is being observed. So anyway, he participates in this ceremony, and it was quite in the Amazon basin. The kind of way that the shamans work is through plant medicine. Specifically, in that instance, something called ayahuasca.
Okay.
It's not a drug. It's not. We got to get over that, calling it a drug.
Right.
You know, when it's used in a sacred fashion, that's what has been going on for thousands of years. Anyway, so he has an experience with that. He comes back, and somewhere along the way, he set up this foundation for shamanic studies. And he has taught many of us, myself, Hank Wesselman, Sandra Ingerman, Albert Velodo. There's other names you would recognize. It's like the second wave, if you will, possibly the third, that he's introduced us to shamanism. And then I've taken other studies, Tibetan shamanism, Celtic, etc. Anyway, Michael said something I thought was really interesting, because there are different opinions as to how does one become a shaman. You know, some say, well, you have to die and come back. You have to have a serious disease and recover from it. In one instance, I think it's Apache tradition long ago, was you dance in the center of the circle with rattlesnakes, and if you're bitten and you survive, then you're a great shaman. Don't want to go there myself.
Right,
you know,
right.
I have a different sort of initiation or initiations that have occurred, but certainly not with rattlesnakes. Anyway, I love what Michael said is, one time he said, there's only two things it takes to be a shaman, really, all this about this and this way. There's only two things it takes. One is know how to do the shamanic journey and create miracles. That's all you got to do.
Okay.
And the reason he says that is because in old days, you go to the shaman and it doesn't work, people stop coming.
Right.
So that's why the shamanic journey. So a shaman these days in our contemporary world is someone who is able to travel to non-ordinary reality and work with helping spirits and bring that information back, whether it's ceremony or a healing tradition or something that's given to him by spirit directly. And that's one of the keys of shamanism, is direct revelation. Not going through an intermediary, but going directly to the helping spirits and bringing that information back for healing and teaching. As I mentioned, the three worlds, he or she may travel to any of these worlds depending upon the purpose and bring that back. Typically, the shaman has allies, spirit helpers, that both animal spirit helpers as well as human or human-looking spirit helpers. These days, what we're seeing more and more is a resurgence, you could say a revival of some of the old ways across the board. So-called New Age, a lot of stuff in New Age is Old Age. You know, It's been around thousands of years, including shamanism. So a shaman really is someone who has that gift or has that art, that practice of traveling, sending his or her consciousness into NOR, non-ordinary reality. And they're working with the helping spirits, which he's developed a relationship with. And then bringing that information back for guidance, for healing, for ceremonies, etc. It's working much more with not just with, but much more with the earth spirits and the earth itself, honoring the earth seasons, honoring the earth cycles. One of my books, the first book in this genre, I've written some as a therapist, but the first book in this genre is called Sacred Ceremony. And I think it's, all false humility aside, it's a good book.
Right.
It offers people not formulas, but guidelines for how to create ceremony, or a way to say it more accurately is how to bring ceremony forth. Because when we pay attention to what Spirit's directives are, we get that information as to how to create a ceremony, such as, having a place where you have a window, setting it up, in a really conscientious fashion, maybe an altar near whatever it may be, but doing it as a sacred act of ceremony. I wandered off that. I trust that gives.
No, you answered it perfectly. Yeah, you answered it perfectly. Now, you talk a lot about spirit guides and animal spirit guides. Can you describe them?
Oh yeah, it's certainly one of my passions, and I've got 2 books out on animal spirit guides. Animal Spirit Guides is the title, and Pocket Guide to Spirit Animals. And then 2 sets of oracle cards, one called Power Animals and one called Messages from Your Animal Spirit Guide. So yeah, it's just like that bunny I saw yesterday. Well, let me qualify it and say this is what an animal spirit guide is. Okay, it's a general umbrella term. Any animal that comes to you in an unusual way, or repeatedly, there's something pretty big happening. And what that is that spirit, in order to get, or God, you could say, right, those words can be used interchangeably in my world, will send a courier, a messenger to you. And it might be, and the way they get your attention, like I say, is an unusual appearance. Example, a couple days ago at the gym, I mentioned, I never saw one before, and I've been going there a year and a half, and I don't know if I'll ever see one again, but there's a bunny hopping across the parking lot, and I believe I was probably the only one that saw that bunny. Yeah, I still call them bunnies.
So do I.
Yeah, bunny rabbit. They're bunny rabbits, right? Anyway, so I just noted it, at the time I was working out, so I didn't really ask. But later I asked, well, what's the message? Now I believe that bunny rabbit had not just that physical being, not just the life force in that being, but here's the difference when an animal is an animal spirit guide, is that rabbit is a representative of the oversoul of the entire species. There's something bigger coming through there. And so there's the physical rabbit, there's the life force of the rabbit, there's the oversoul of the rabbit, and it's connected to Grand Central. Right. Where, okay, hey, we got to get Farmer this message. And so boom, boom. I say that sounds very narcissistic in a way to say that, but it isn't. It isn't that. It's that anybody can tune in this way and learn from our animal brothers and sisters when they're sent to us in that way. So in that instance, now rabbit, spirit, can mean a few different things depending upon circumstances, etc. If you think of the characteristics of the animal, sometimes that will give it away as to what the message is. Now, yeah, I put this stuff in my books, and that's another resource, but I really like to see people kind of either figure it out or get the message directly. So that's one way, is that what are the characteristics of the animal? What might that say to me as a metaphor, for me? Second thing is close your eyes and settle in a bit and just ask the spirit animal, what's the message? That's when it gets kind of interesting. Because when you ask that way, things start happening. You might get an impression, a visual impression in the back of your, in your mind's eye, or your attention visually might be drawn to something. You might hear in your inner voice, a short sentence, which is typically how spirit communicates. You might hear something outside in the external world that is in response to your question. This is how it works. You might just get a feeling, a sense of what the message is. Or for those who are more analytic or cognitive, you might just know what it means. Right. That's often somebody who gets that. And each of us has, Pamela, we're a little stronger in one or two of these: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or cognitive. And I always say, go with the strength.
Right.
Go with strength. I had one experience that I thought was pretty interesting. Um, I was telling you about these galaxy things and coming together and all that. And what I kept hearing was perspective. Keep your perspective.
Right.
I go, okay, so then I'm driving down the 73, the highway that I take sometimes, and there's a hawk sitting up on the lamppost. And I'm going, okay, I've seen a hawk before, so I'm kind of going, maybe, might be an animal spirit guide. Not terribly unusual, but the fact that I spotted him was okay. But then about half a mile later, guess what? There's another one. Okay, that's two. That's enough for me. Unusual and repeatedly. As I say, any animal that comes to you in an unusual way and or repeatedly. So I got both. So I didn't close my eyes, but I thought I just asked the question. I said, okay, Hawk, what are you telling me? Perspective. Keep your perspective. Don't get caught up in the mundane, as I was saying earlier. Get this though, Pamela. You want to hear the real corker. My delightful 8-year-old stepdaughter, Ariana, we're sitting down, I think it was that same day, we're sitting down to dinner, and she grabbed my Earth Magic Oracle cards. And she does this every so often. And she goes around and she says, okay, pick a card, So she went to her mom, Jessica, and then she went to Serena, and she comes to me. I pull this card.
Your hawk.
It was the Earth Magic cards, which does have a couple of spirit, but there's different Earth elements in this one. There's tree spirit, there's ocean, there's dragonfly, some of them. But this one was Milky Way, and the key word was perspective.
Wow.
So do you think Spirit was trying to give me a message there?
I sure do.
If I had any doubts, pulling that card, I mean, I get chills when I tell you this, because pulling that card was absolute confirmation, and it's been a great reminder. Keep your perspective. Keep your perspective. If I get lost, get off the track a little bit, step back on it. And perspective, I think in this sense, I believe it was the Dalai Lama. Forgive me if I'm misquoting him, but he defined detachment as objective compassion. I like that. To me, that's another meaning of perspective. Is
Sure.
Be in the world but not of it. Be a little removed, but keep your heart open. Always. So I love that. Anyway, that's an animal spirit guide. Anyway, is anything unusual? And again, the way you can identify the characteristics of the animal, it might be a clue. You have a dream of a lion. And this might sound a little trite, but maybe the message there is to have courage, with what you're faced with. It's very possible. What's another example? Crow. Crow works with me a lot. Crow shows up all the time. They're all around here. I hear them in the morning. I see them. So unusual, I don't consider that unusual. But if one flies right across my windshield as I'm driving, or if I'm sitting outside and one lands right next to me and looks at me, then that's unusual. So then I ask, what are the characteristics of crow? Well, crow is very crafty, very intelligent, very resourceful. That being is very resourceful. Maybe the message is then, hey, Stephen, you've got all the resources you need. Don't worry about it. The other is Crow's cousin, Raven, is in one tradition considered to be the creator bird. So it's about manifestation, bringing into physical reality that which is formed in thought, and behind that, what spirit is urging us to do. So that's Animal Spirit Guides 101.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that I love the most, though, about all of that teaching that you do on that subject is it really makes you step back and put aside the busyness of your life and really start observing what's around you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because, it's one way that draws us into the natural world is through the animals, because we can't avoid them. You might dismiss a tree or a plant or something like that, initially, but if an animal appears in that way, especially in that way, an unusual way, it's to get your attention. So,
Yeah, my
uh,
son is my oldest is 21, and when he has dreams, he'll wake up the next day and it'll be like, Mom, you need to pull your animal spirit guidebook out. This is what was in my dream. And he goes right down the list of animals. What do you think that means?
it's cool. I'm so
So it
happy.
does. You know, when you have kids that are caught up in the electronics age, I love when they spend that time outside. I love when they connect with nature and the animals.
Good for you. Yeah. No, good for you. It's where we're seeing the most evidence, I believe, of the shift that's occurring
Mm-hmm.
in human consciousness. And although it's not, total, but it's happening where there is more interest in connecting with nature. As I mentioned, the Waldorf inspired school, charter school, other types of educational approaches to have children really get to know nature. It doesn't have to be a scary place.
Right.
We're going to go to. I haven't done this because of the weather and the timing and all this, but Joshua Tree is one of my favorite places. It's
Yeah,
about
I've
two
heard of
hours
it.
from here. You know Joshua Tree?
Yeah.
It's I just love it because it can be so quiet. You can wander off from the campground, just maybe 300 yards or something, and it's just very still and quiet. Beautiful sunsets, and you connect with nature. We made tracking boxes, where we smooth it out, and then you put little pieces of food there, and the next morning you go and you find what tracks are there, and you try to identify.
Oh, that's neat.
And climbing the rocks there at Joshua
Right.
Tree, these magnificent boulders that looks like God just kind of went, ugh, pushed them out of the earth. Yeah, to get children acquainted with nature, and one way is through the animals, and starting to hint at what they might be telling a child,
Right.
or a grown offspring, I guess, not a child anymore. In fact, that was inspired really by my wife, Jessica, a few years ago because of the other oracle card decks. She said, you should do a children's spirit animal cards. And that sat gestating for 2 years before we finally produced it. She and I worked together on it. It was really fun. Just 24 cards. And kids love them. Parents love them. We've gotten lots of awards. The publisher has sought out these different, not sought them out, but, sent them and say,
Sure.
we've got some awards for these children's spirit animal cards. It's a way of reaching, the younger crowd that are beginning to emerge. Aren't they amazing? I mean,
And
these
they're
little
so
kids.
gifted and talented at such young ages, and you just sit back and go, we really need to groom that even more. Let them
Yeah,
not forget the
yeah,
ancestors and forget that nature's out there.
yeah. It's like we have limits in our household on electronics, and I think it again is at the Waldorf Inspired School called Journey. They say no TV, no
Right.
TV, no electronics. Well, we're here, we live in the world, and it's part of the world right now, and it's just the way it is. But you don't have to just, when you see an 8-year-old going around with a smartphone, it's like,
I made mine wait until they were in ninth grade before they got them.
good for you, good for you. No, I think that's a really good cutoff right about then.
Yeah,
And again, it's what we do, and
sure.
it's nothing like inherently wrong with it. It's just part of the deal. But it's also out of balance sometimes, I think.
Sure.
And there we go with that word again, is to bring things back into balance. And again, that comes back to shamanism. That's really another aspect of shamanism. Shamanism is to, even a one-to-one healing session is to help a person come back to balance.
Right.
The client I spoke with earlier today, that's part of what we talked about is really bringing the spirituality back into balance with her just day-to-day functioning, and in a very corporate kind of job. A little more challenging sometimes, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Farmer, I really want to thank you for being a part of this summit. And before we finish up here today, if there was one thing that you could say to everyone here that could help them on their journey to empowering themselves, what would it be?
Save your money. Just kidding. No, that's the trickster. Raven is one of my spirit animals that I it's trickster. That's a tough question, but I think that what the most important thing is to have a spiritual discipline of some sort. And I don't mean necessarily religious. You can find a spiritual discipline within a religion, but don't get boxed into any dogma about it. Find where your heart is, and also that you can reach spirit directly. That's again another tenet of shamanism is direct revelation. Spirit, God will never tell you to do harm.
Right.
So the more you can access that directly, the better. And it really is to have a spiritual discipline. And again, that could be meditation, prayer, yoga, Tai Chi. There's a number of ways. I did Tai Chi for a number of years. I loved it because it was a moving meditation. It was very physical. Sit down was always a little challenging for me. So yoga or Tai Chi is a way to really embody spirit. And that's what it's all about. We're going through some major shifts, and we need to have ourselves anchored in spirit. It's that simple.
Well, it's been my pleasure sharing this time with you today, and I'm so grateful that you were able to be a part of this summit. And Dr. Farmer has been gracious enough to offer you the ability to be able to learn more about him and his services and his certification program. And you can access his website at www.earthmagic.net, and it will also be at the bottom of our email here. And he's also offered our summit participants a free gift. It's an MP3 recording of getting a message from an animal spirit guide. So that should be very unique and interesting for people who've never gone that route before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's easy. It's actually relatively easy to do too. That's a nice thing about it, the way I've designed this meditation journey. So
Wonderful.
have fun, guys.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, and it has been such a pleasure talking with you, and wish you much luck with these books and certification classes that you're teaching now and everything else you have going on in your life.
Well, thank you very much, Pamela, and God bless you for the work that you're doing and disseminating this information with all of us who are in the summit. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.